And this is Authentic Parenting, a podcast about personal development in the context of parenting, where I explore how you can find more calm, connection, and joy in parenting through the process of self-discovery and inner growth with a trauma-informed lens. In episode 229, 6 Signs Your Marriage is Headed for Divorce, we talked about the stigma of divorce. In today's episode, we are talking about marriage and divorce. This is an open and honest conversation with Pamela Savino, a mom, life coach, and the author of a brand new book called Soar, a spiritual journey through divorce, transformation, and self-actualization. Pam had a typical life, married with 4 children for many years. She had lost herself in motherhood. Her husband and herself, they were great business partners and both worked hard, but realized their marriage would never leave both of them fulfilled. They both knew it years earlier, but subconsciously blocked it out. They had different coping mechanisms and were doing what they needed to do to cause the least amount of disruption for the kids. At some point, they realized they weren't doing them any favors by giving them this template for marriage. Once Pamela overcame her fears, she made a decision that allowed them both to step into a life that honored who they were as individuals. They managed their divorce amicably. They found a new balance in their lives, one that enables them to work together as the best team for their children and families. I truly enjoyed this deep conversation with Pam Savino, and I hope you will find it inspiring as well. For full episode show notes, additional free resources on parenting, contact info, and ways to work with me, visit authenticparenting.com. As a listener of the show, you receive a 10% discount on all my coaching packages. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to know what I'm up to in my personal life, see behind the scenes of podcasting, work, get inspirational content on personal development and parenting, participate in my book giveaways, connect with me on Instagram, the only social media platform that I use almost daily and somewhat enjoy. My handle is authentic.parenting.podcast. And now please enjoy this very honest and deep conversation with Pam Savino. Pamela, welcome to Authentic Parenting.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I am so excited to speak with you about divorce from a female perspective, reframing divorce, looking through the lens of growth. You have 4 children, ages 9, 12, 13, and 16, and you initiated a divorce.
I did.
Yes. So walk me through that process. What triggered that divorce? Are we open to speak about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm an open book. I really do feel that when we talk about things openly and honestly and transparency, that's where the healing happens at an individual level and the healing happens on a global level. So, and I want to color the chronology in a little bit too, because I firmly believe that no events happen in a vacuum. No events happen in isolation. I believe that every single step in our evolution plays a role in delivering us to every moment. So my husband and I were disconnected for years, and it was pretty obvious, but we were going through the motions we were knee deep in the throes of parenting. I had 4 kids within 7 years, in addition to 2 pregnancy losses within that time frame. I used to joke, I could barely get out of my pajamas by noon on some days. So the baby years rolled into the toddler years, and we were both just grinding it out in our respective separate realities. I was a stay-at-home mom with the 4 kids, and he was working, jet setting around the world, doing his thing as a busy professional. And life was challenging, right? We were operating at a dizzying pace for years, but we didn't realize that we weren't making investments in our marriage along the way. So while everything was getting done, we weren't taking time to connect and really fortify that primary relationship. So life just kind of got crazier and crazier. We layered on more and more and didn't realize that we were kind of drifting apart. And we were in counseling. We started counseling and we're in that for about 6 months.
And can I ask you, how did you decide to go into counseling, and whose idea was that?
Yes, of course. That was my idea. At first, he wasn't amenable, but I said, we need to figure this out. It came to a point where the disconnect was it was becoming very heavy and very cumbersome and just very weighing energeticus.
What did it look like when you say disconnect? Were you not talking to one another?
We were talking. We were amicable. There was really, no fighting or, nothing, none of the ugliness that you would associate with divorce. It was just, in terms of the deep connection, in terms of that emotional connection, that mental connection, we weren't having kind of those deeper connected conversations. We were just simply kind of we were going through the motions of parenting. We were just putting one foot in front of the other. And I started to project a little bit, thinking down the road as, when the kids moved out and, and really it just came down to the question, is this the person I would choose today? And the reality is we had both grown so much over the years, but we had kind of drifted in separate directions.
When you met him, how old were you guys?
Young. It actually goes way back. We went to high school together and I kind of had that like freshman crush on him in high school, and that kind of never went anywhere. And then we went to the same college and we had overlapping circles of friends. We started dating when we were juniors in college. So I was, 18, 19 at the time. So pretty young. We got married. We were engaged by 22, married by 23. So pretty young. I mean, we thought we were doing things the right way though. We kind of fell into that whole model of what we felt like we should be doing. You go to college and you find someone and you get married, and we were checking all the boxes. We had all the boxes checked. We both came from good families. We both had, solid careers to look forward to. We both had the same general values, etc. But we just weren't connected on that deep level.
And that happened over time. Looking back now, do you feel like you did have that mental, emotional, deep connection, but it sort of evaporated over time? Because, humans grow, we all grow in different ways. Some people grow at a rapid rate, and our growth doesn't have the same timetable, right, with our partners. Do you think it was that natural progression, like you grew and you exhausted this relationship to the max, and sometimes that happens, right? Or that deep connection wasn't there from the beginning, but you were hoping it would happen, or there was enough of it to maintain? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think for us, in hindsight, and again, having experienced many, many, many more years of life over the years, I believe that we didn't have that strong mental, emotional connection. I believe that for a relationship to be deeply connected and for a relationship to stand the test of time, I believe there needs to be many, many different forms of connection, many different layers. I believe there needs to be an emotional connection, mental connection, physical connection, and spiritual connection. And we didn't.
Don't you? Yeah, I'm just discussing these ideas out loud because I'm thinking about those topics too. And it seems like you're a good guest and a candidate to talk about this from a female perspective particularly. But don't you think like that's a tall order we put on ourselves as men, as women, just in general? Right? Like we want everything from one person that we met in high school or college, and we expect that to work till death do us part.
Right.
Don't you think that's like such a silly and unrealistic expectation?
I do. I now believe that, the till death do us part model is antiquated. I think that the traditional model of marriage is no longer where humanity is going. I think that relationships are more dynamic. They're more of a living, breathing thing. And, I no longer subscribe to that kind of antiquated model of marriage in my mind. I believe that relationships are more productive when there aren't conditions. And I'm not saying no standards or no expectation. I'm just saying marriages get kind of complicated or get messy because, there's conditions associated with them. And I believe I would rather be in a relationship where, I'm encouraged to keep bringing my best every single day, a relationship that's based on growth as an individual, growth as a couple, growth as, for humanity, because I believe that speaks volumes because it's once you're in that marriage, that legal construct, it can be really, really messy to undo. And energetically, I believe that there's a shift that happens on an energetic level when we make that shift into that traditional marriage model. And so I think that, that commitment to growth is what sustains relationships over time. The difference though, for us, we didn't have that strong foundation from the beginning and we didn't commit to growth on a daily basis. We didn't commit to practicing love, to practicing growth every single day. And that's why the drift started to happen.
Mm-hmm. And so now we're in the therapist's office. Did he agree to go to couples therapy?
At first, he was not amenable to it, not amenable. And I guess I'm not quite sure the reason. I think I guess I can't speak to that, but I'm very pro therapy. That was the first time in my life I had ever been in therapy, but I know the merits of it. I've seen the value of it in other cases. And I kept saying to myself at that point, I can't do this anymore. That was kind of I was at the breaking point. I thought, I can't do this. I can't live in this. I was sort of in this straddling two separate realities. I felt like, my mind, I'm going through the motions here, but this is not where my heart is. And it's so hard to live in a place where you're not living authentically. And I was in this quagmire. It was a situation where it was not good enough to stay, not bad enough to leave. It was just kind of a mess. I felt like all I kept saying was, I can't do this anymore. And while I had it all from the outside, the 4 kids, the big house, I got to, I stayed home with the kids every day. I was like living the dream from the outside, and on the inside, I was miserable. And I thought, I'm not doing anyone any favors. I'm not bringing my best parenting skills, to this setup because I wasn't happy with where I was. I wasn't happy with myself. I wasn't happy. And it felt bleak to me. It felt bleak knowing that I was in a relationship that had effectively run its course. And just to think about living in that reality until I died or whenever, that just was really, really hard. So I said, we need to figure this out. I said, let's go to counseling. So he finally agreed. And
do you think it was too late at that point to go to counseling? Now looking back, do you think you could have gone earlier? I'm just curious about the timing of the counseling.
Yeah, that's a great question. In our case, it was absolutely too late. It was too little and too late. If we had gone earlier, we would have learned certain skills that would have helped, for sure, would have helped us understand each other better. It would have helped us communicate. We might have been, we definitely had some sort of connection, right? Otherwise we wouldn't have gotten married, right? If we didn't think that there was something there. So I think while we didn't have a deep connection on all levels, I think there might have been something that we could have done if we would have started earlier, just in terms of learning each other's love languages. That's a huge thing. That was something I discovered when I was in my early 40s and trying to make a last ditch effort on trying to save the marriage. It's like, love languages. He speaks in gifts and acts of service, and I speak in words of affirmation and physical touch. Wow, no wonder we don't really get each other, right? No wonder our languages don't translate. So that was a big aha moment. The I feel statements, that was something else I was sort of late to the party on. Not, you did this or you did that, but I feel hurt when you do this. I feel abandoned when you do this. Those types of things, that opens up the channels of communication in a much different way. So I don't think either one of us really had the skills to weather some of the challenges that we've had to weather. I had a miscarriage, we lost a child, we dealt with some pretty serious and pretty deep life experiences.
Yes.
And we
You know what I know I'm just trying to constantly interrupt you because
No,
I
you're
don't want
fine.
those excellent points to go away. I sometimes feel like when a couple experiences a significant loss, like a miscarriage, two, one, it doesn't matter how many, or if there is an abortion, perhaps, with that, they lose part of the relationship, part of the love, and they need to sort of do a little bit of work, but who has time for that? And people not only sort of don't have the completion of the loss of the baby, the pregnancy, they also never deal with the loss of that part of that lost relationship. And so they drift apart more and more. I see that a lot in our culture, in working with people, and just being a person and having friends and observing relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Was that your experience too?
Oh, definitely. I mean, when we experienced the most profound loss we experienced was in 2005. I lost a baby in the third trimester, totally unexpectedly. And it was incredibly challenging on a number of different levels. And we grieved totally differently. And we didn't heal together. We didn't work through it together. I sort of grieved on my own and he grieved in his own way, and we didn't really heal together. So to be quite honest, that rift started to happen, back then. And some resentment built up, right? I mean, on my part. And I didn't know how to articulate that to him. And quite honestly, that's probably when we should have called in a counselor.
Yeah.
We're dealing with this profound grief. And in the midst of, trying to, we wanted to move forward with, with growing our family. And there was just so many different complexities layered on. And we had another baby soon thereafter. So life got busy, but we really never healed from that. And in hindsight, I would have called a counselor and then to help us each individually deal with the grief and heal together. So I know for my part, and that's how I said early on, I believe that no events happen in a vacuum. While I was the one that initiated the divorce, this goes way back, right? This is cumulative. So I remember in 2005 thinking, I need you. And that's not his skill set is not to be the one comforting with words. And, he's a little more closed off in that regard. And again, it's not a judgment. It's not a knock. It's just, that's who he is. So we could have used someone to help us instill the skills that we needed to work through that life experience. So I had a little resentment, probably more than a little. I felt like, I had a C-section, I was a mess physically, emotionally, spiritually. I felt hopeless. I felt isolated. And I felt like this is when I needed you most. And I didn't feel like you were my rock. Right. Yeah. So when I look back at like, I got myself through that time. And, and again, he has his perspective. And so again, this isn't at all about pointing the finger, but it's just looking back, just realizing that we could have done things a lot differently.
Do you think if you had a support system, like we say it takes a village to raise a child or to support a mother, do you think if you had a strong female support system, not just a man, right? Because we want everything from our man, and are they capable? I mean, they're human too. And the way they are raised in our culture and society, shut down your emotions, be a strong man, don't be a weak, don't be this. Do you think, and the more I do this work with parents, I realize that females crave female company and connection and the sisterhood and circle of support, which is, I guess, ingrained in us, right? It's encoded in our DNA. Do you think if you had that kind of support, either naturally meaning you were living with aunts and grandmas and mothers and things like that in that kind of environment, or perhaps there was a doula, or you sought out help of some sort, it created it was available and you went to a support group or something like that. Do you think that would have been helpful to you in your own processing and saving your relationship? Or I'm not sure. I'm just hypothetically asking this.
And are you talking about, just to clarify, support around the divorce or support going way back to when I was dealing with the loss?
Yes, support going way back with your loss. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you know what? Interestingly, I sought that out. I mean, I was in a support group of other females who I met through that experience. Through our church, I was connected with other moms who had experienced losses.
Mm-hmm.
And I did meet with that support group. I think it was weekly for a while, and then it was once a month. And in fact, they're still dear friends today. So I felt like I had every other form of support in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't getting that from my primary relationship. I had the women's support group. My parents were immensely supportive. Friends, neighbors were bringing dinners every week for months. It was just, I had all the support, and all I kept thinking of is, I'm getting the support from everywhere else, but I'm not getting that emotional support.
Okay,
from the
good.
person I needed.
Good for clarifying emotional support, because people can bring food. It's not the same. What were you seeking or needing? You said emotional support. How? And this might be a difficult question, but I'm challenging you and myself to think about it, because we often want things, but it's hard to put words to it, right?
Right.
If you're able now, I would love to hear what would it look like? What were you needing in that moment? Like, looking again retrospectively.
Yeah, what I was missing most, I needed from, again, my primary relationship, my husband. Like, I needed him to say, I've got this. I'm the rock. I'm going to step in and take care of you and protect you. I needed that. I didn't feel protected. I didn't feel safe. It's not that I was in a precarious, situation physically. It was just that I wanted someone to just hold me and say, it's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. And I felt like I didn't have that.
Just that, right? It's so simple. It's not much. Right. Did you recognize that back then, that it was so simple, that that's what you needed, that sense of safety and comfort?
Yeah, I did recognize it. I recognized it. And I also, I realized I wasn't going to get it. I was never going to get it because
why?
Because that's not who he was.
Okay.
That's not who he was.
This is juicy stuff. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I know. I could talk for hours about this.
Why, if you knew what you were looking for, what you were missing and craving, why couldn't you find courage, vulnerability, words to ask for it from the very partner that you were sharing your love, your losses, your children, everything with? That's the $100 million question.
Absolutely. And it's a great question. I love the question. I didn't even know myself well enough. I wasn't even evolved enough to put words around it. I had all of those emotions bubbling up that were just trying to protect me. I didn't know how to go. I think I was scared to become vulnerable. I was scared. I felt like I still had walls up. I had my guard up. I felt like, well, he's not giving it to me. So my knee-jerk reaction, that protective mechanism was, well, I'll just figure out how to power through and do this myself. So I'll just put on a happy face and keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep filling up my life and keep moving and if I'm getting support from outside, well, I'm just going to go to my girlfriends and get it, or I'm just going to surround myself with people who can give it. But I didn't know how. I didn't have the skill set back then to have the conversation. I didn't have the courage to be vulnerable and say, you know what, I'm really scared and I'm really hurt and I'm feeling really hopeless. That's a painful place to go. And I wasn't willing. I didn't even know how to begin to go there.
Yeah. And exactly, by saying he wasn't giving it to me, we often say that, right? Because it's a lot easier. And perhaps maybe you've tried in different ways in the past and you've been not given or rejected, or not given in a way that was nourishing for you, right?
Right.
I find that this is such an important aspect of our relationship, of our intimate relationships. It takes two people to take responsibility for our own needs, right?
Absolutely.
To go to that discomfort place, that uncomfortable place, to be vulnerable, to show up and say, this is what I'm needing. Are you able to meet that need? And perhaps that may scare that person because he's not used to this kind of practicing authenticity, vulnerability thing, right?
Right.
And usually it can push a man, like a man, off a little bit.
Right.
Right? It's kind of scary. But I think the more we do, the more we cultivate, it's a practice. And it's so liberating. The more I practice that in my life, I feel like, wow, it's not comfortable at all, but I'm growing and I'm finding the language and I'm fine tuning this skill every time. And it's not about the other person necessarily. I think I find this in my personal life that when I become more vulnerable and speak from my needs and show up authentically, the other person also sort of puts their armor aside and it disarms them as well. And it gives them sort of just a little permission to be more authentic themselves. They may not know how to, right?
Absolutely. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, I absolutely agree. And as I look back and reflect on that, I thought, how unfair of me to just expect that he knew that that's what I needed. Right. I mean, I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the language. I didn't even know how to put myself, step forward and say, this is what I need, how to identify exactly what it was that I needed and how to articulate it. I didn't have the words for that. So again, in hindsight, it was unfair of me to place that expectation on him and expect him to deliver exactly what I needed so that I could feel whole and healed.
Right. Because if we do, what is our partner going to say? I find it like every time I practiced it with my husband, he's willing and open to giving and meeting my need. It's just the hardest part is for me to articulate it. I think that's the hardest part.
I totally agree. And I think this is, I mentioned love languages. This is such a huge piece of it because, in hindsight, he was trying to support me. It's not like he was off, out with his buddies hanging. I mean, he was trying to support me in other ways by taking care of things around the house but it wasn't in the language that I needed him to be speaking in at that moment. So I just think it's so important to have those conversations and to put language around what our needs are. And that I think comes with life experience though. In hindsight, I was 20, at the time when we had this profound loss, I was 29. So not like super young, but again, I just didn't have the life experience prior to that point to evolve me. And now where I am, my current state of evolution, I am where I am because of all of my life experiences. So because of my pregnancy losses, because of the divorce, I am now in a position to have those vulnerable, open, honest, transparent conversations. I'm so connected to myself and to all that is that I now have the courage to have those conversations. But again, without those life experiences, it's hard to put our authentic, vulnerable, transparent selves forward.
Agree. And thank you so much for being so honest. And now that you are practicing authenticity, let's call it that, are you able to speak more courageously with vulnerability with him as well? I know you co-parent together. Are you able to show that side of you to him now?
Oh my gosh, I love that you asked this question. Yes. I mean, wholeheartedly across the board, yes. And I look back, I mean, you should see in my book, I call us rock star co-parents. It's because I feel like we have both grown and evolved so much. And I look at the way we communicate to each other now, and I think, oh my gosh, if we could have communicated that way all throughout our marriage, we probably wouldn't be in this position. But again, it's because of the life experiences. It's because of the challenges that we've encountered and because we've both chosen growth in our respective lives that we now have the skills to communicate and to bring our open, honest, vulnerable, selves forward. And we do use things like I feel, or we're soliciting each other's opinions more. Whereas before, when we were operating in silos, compartmentalized in our relationship, we would both just kind of be making decisions on the fly and not really having the communication, asking the other to weigh in. I mean, I look at our communication at our text streams and I'm like, this is like textbook, like perfect parenting communication. Why couldn't we have done this all these years? But again, this is the result of growth, right? This is the result of growth. And witnessing that is a little bit bittersweet sometimes because, again, I look back and say, oh man, if he could have communicated like that, or if he could have made himself vulnerable during our marriage, we wouldn't be here. And he can say the same about me, right? If she could have not stressed about all the little details, whatever. But again, I want to emphasize that's where growth comes in. This is what happens when you choose growth.
I think also just a fear of vulnerability, the fear of allowing others to fully see us, even in an intimate relationship, hinders this process, and sometimes people need to go through the divorce to allow themselves to crack open completely and say, you know what, I am who I am. I choose authenticity and this is how I live. Sometimes it requires that kind of shuttering of the previous state in order for that to happen. It would be amazing if people could recognize that while they were married, right? And say, why aren't we doing this? And I'm always questioning that. I think that fear of being vulnerable holds us back big time.
I wholeheartedly agree. And it does. I mean, it's scary. It's scary to let ourselves be seen, but that's what being authentic is all about. It's not about just being positive. It's not just about putting a happy face on, but it's about being real and it's about being raw and it's about putting yourself out there and exposing yourself. And that's scary, right? I mean,
because people can reject you, right? People can not accept you. And that fear feels more, scarier than the fear of, than the first fear, choosing not to be open and authentic, right?
Right.
People choose that other one because it's a little more comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And, wrapped up in that, letting other people see letting other people see us is we have to be willing to see ourselves first, right? We have to be willing to take our mask off and look in the mirror and see who we really are. And that's a scary process as well.
And when did you do that process for yourself?
It started, my spiritual growth and transformation really went into turbo mode back in, it was 2013, I believe, that's when I really started to peel back the layers on myself. And when I did, that's when I started to do that self-discovery work on my own.
What precipitated it? I'm curious. Did you turn 40 and hit I feel like a lot of women, when they hit 40 or after 40, it's like, I don't care anymore attitude. And something happens. Did it happen for you at that age?
It was a few years before 40. It wasn't as connected to age, but it was, it was really precipitated by how I felt about myself and my self-image. I was trying to lose the weight. I was having a really hard time losing the weight after having my fourth child. And I had been running and just trying to run the weight off and kind of doing everything wrong. And I just thought, I'm not happy with how I look. So I joined a gym and started lifting and really started to invest in my health and wellness. I was exposed to a completely new group of people who were spiritual and did yoga and just kind of had that, had their spiritual practices. And my eyes were open to a completely new way of living. Prior to then, I would consider myself as having a very narrow focus, a very narrow view of the world and a very homogenous demographic in which who I surrounded myself with. So I became more open-minded. I became more introspective. And that's really when my journey started. And, that's when I started to peel back the layers. And really I started to do my soul work. And when you go, it's like, a genie coming out of a bottle. There's just no going back, right? When you start to go down that path of growth and transformation and going deep and doing your soul work, there's just no going back. And at first, sometimes it's easier to go back into your unconscious reality, right? Where you're just kind of putting one foot in front of the other, but that's very surfacey. And I was never, ever going to achieve the levels of depth that I have achieved now. And I actually invited my husband along. I said, I'm experiencing this really cool stuff, this spiritual stuff. And he just wasn't into it because I said, this would be awesome to do together. And what I didn't understand at the time is that spirituality is an individual journey. We each have our own individual journeys, our own individual paths to follow. And life becomes complicated because we're inextricably involved in all kinds of relationships, right? Marriages, friendships, families, all of these group constructs. But ultimately, we are each on our individual journeys. And I didn't understand that I couldn't just invite him on the ship and we would just drift off and have a happy life together. He wasn't ready to grow at that time. He even joked. I said, I'm going to see this psychic and the spiritualist. He joked, he goes, yeah, just don't spend a lot of money, and kind of just dismissed the discussion. And I didn't understand. I was kind of trying to force him to want to grow at that time. And it doesn't work that way, right? It's like trying to force a flower to bloom. We have to just sit back, in much the same way that nature, everything blooms in nature on its own timetable. So does every individual. So I didn't understand at that time that I needed to just sit back and let him bloom in his own time. And he wasn't ready to grow then. But like you said, sometimes it takes, a shattering, a relationship to break down in order for us to fully awaken. That was his wake-up call. Our divorce, me announcing that I wanted to get divorced, was his catalyst, right? His heart awakening catalyst.
When and how did you announce it? And how long did you think about it before you announced it? How long did it take that? Because you don't get up one day and say, I'm divorcing you. From research, at least I know, and from working with people, it takes at least like 6 months for a female or to announce it. I want to know from a real experience.
Yeah. And I actually did not know that that piece of data that you just told me, the 6 months. But when you started to ask the question, my answer is 6 months. So we started counseling. When I asked him to go to counseling, I actually was going in with the hope and the expectation that we would be able to just like patch this whole thing up and move forward. I was hoping the therapist was going to have like this magic bullet, these 10 steps to patching up your marriage and moving on and riding off in the horse and carriage. I did not anticipate the self-discovery component of therapy. Even as in couples therapy, I started to have some newfound awarenesses that I had never known about myself. So literally a week into therapy, I'm like, the writing was on the wall. I thought, we're not going to be able to patch this up. I was learning things about myself, and we were so completely misaligned in so many different ways that it was about a week into therapy that I knew this is going to be heading in the direction of divorce. And so I still continued along that path thinking, well, maybe there's some way she can help us come together. And we were kind of putting one foot in front of the other, even in therapy, trying to bring our open, honest, authentic selves forward. But fast forward 6 months, and one Wednesday night, I was making dinner for my family. My husband was at work. I was waiting for him to come home, and a text came in. And I grabbed it. I heard it. The phone was on the other end of the kitchen. I went and grabbed it, looked at my phone. It was a text from him. And given the nature of the message, I could tell it was not meant for me. Ooh. So I responded and I said, who is this for? And there was no response. And I asked him again. And then I called him. I snuck up to my bedroom because I didn't want the kids to overhear any of this. And I snuck up to the bedroom and I called him and he didn't pick up. And then I called him again and he picked up and I said, that text that you just sent me, who was that for? And he said, oh, that was just for one of my buddies. He's having a wine dinner or whatever. And by this point, I was completely out of fear mode. I knew that I wanted to get a divorce. I was waiting for the right moment. I was waiting for the catalyst. And I just challenged him. I called him out on the carpet and I said, I don't believe you. I said, you're having an affair, aren't you? And there was just silence, radio silence for a couple of seconds. And with an exhale, he said, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I thought this, and what I felt in that moment, I'm getting spiritual chills as I say this, because it was affirmation from the universe. It was on March 8th, 2017. For 3 years, I had been seeing a code 1118. The universe was telling me that on March 8th, I went to see a spiritualist to kind of decode this. On
Wow.
March 8th, you are going to get a sign about what you're going to need to do, about your life is going to change. You're going to get a sign from the universe. Just be open to receiving. March 8th is when this text came in, and it was 1000% clear what direction I needed to go. So that was a Wednesday night. We had a therapy session already set up for Thursday night. I called my therapist Thursday morning and I said, here's what's going down tonight. Not like, can you help me repair this? Oh my God, I'm a mess. I just found this out. I was so faith-filled and courage-filled at that moment. And I said, here's what's going down tonight. This is what I just found out. I'm going to tell him in the session that I want to get a divorce. So please be prepared, come up with an action plan to handle any fallout that may ensue in a couple of hours.
Okay, so here is the thing. You already knew that the relationship wasn't working. And as an equal participant in that relationship, perhaps he felt the same way, right?
Oh, sure.
Right? Because you both were in this relationship that wasn't working. It's not like it wasn't working for you and it was working great for him, and right? And so, and in your mind, you already knew, it sounds like, that it ended. This relationship wasn't working and you were trying to patch it up. But somehow, again, and I'm not trying to undermine or anything.
No, I know. I love these questions.
Right? Because my mind, I'm a little crazy. I think a little, crazily about those things. But yet we don't have the courage to take responsibility and say, I'm ending this. You were waiting for something from him. I'm not saying you did wait something from him. So it happened, right? But as females, as women, I think it's sort of hard we knew the relationship, you knew the relationship ended, but you were still fighting for it. You were working for it. You were giving yourself. And somehow you were not taking that bold step to end it yourself, even though you knew it was ending or it ended already. But when you saw the sign from him, you see what I mean? It's sort of easy when somebody already took the responsibility a little more for the ending of it, which was his infidelity. You know what I'm trying to say?
I do. Yeah.
It's not the judgment or anything. This is just a discovery and observation. And I don't know why we do that, because I don't know. It's an interesting thing in human relationships. It's a lot easier, right, for us not to feel guilty or take the blame for it because you did that and now we're divorcing. We know that was not the reason. I just want to talk about those subjects out loud, and I want to hear your thoughts on it too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it all goes back to fear. I mean, even though I was still trying to make it work, I realized I was trying to make it work in order to keep the family unit intact. I realized the relationship I wasn't viewing at that time. I didn't realize that getting your primary relationship right should be the main goal. And then everything else will kind of fill in around that. I was coming at it from the perspective of, I was still in fear mode. I was still in that antiquated, till death do us part.
Right.
We said we were going to, come hell or high water, we are going to work through all of this together for the rest of our lives. Right. So I had fears around splitting up our family. I had fears about what this would do, what this would mean for our kids in the present day, for their future. I mean, I was willing to sacrifice my own happiness and my own fulfillment in order to keep the family unit intact.
This abstract construct that binds us, right?
Right.
Those fears of how would you live with 4 kids on your own as a single woman, as a single mother, and you didn't have a job at that time, right? You were a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
You had to make so many decisions. It takes courage and a bold step to dismantle all of this and go against this all and take that leap with 4 kids, with no job, with knowing the unknown and just, I don't know. How did it feel for you?
Yeah. I mean, it felt, the the word that comes to mind, I was faith-filled. I was faithful because, you know what? I was stepping into my truth. I felt like the universe had prepared me for this moment. It had teed it up. It had warned me, or, let me know that I was going to receive a sign. That was the moment. That was the moment I was waiting for. So I thought, I don't know how this is going to look. I don't know what's going to happen next. All I know, what I need to do is I need to make one heart-centered decision after another, every single moment, every single day, and trust the process. I don't know what my future looks like, right? We're splitting up. We each bought individual homes. We both left our marital home. So we had house purchases. I'm thinking about, how am I going to manage 4 kids now in a household with fewer resources? And I mean, it was kind of dizzying for a while, but I thought I went on faith. I didn't have any hesitation. I didn't look back. I knew that because I was stepping into a place of authenticity, that everything would fall into place. And it has.
And how did he receive the news of the divorce? Did you break the news in the therapy session like you had hoped?
I did. Yeah, I did. Just, a minute or two. And I said, I've been thinking about what I found out last night, and I would like to get a divorce. I was just very direct. And, he didn't fight it. He didn't challenge me on it. I mean, I think he didn't quite, we had discussions after that. And I think he didn't quite know, he wasn't sure. He didn't know. He just was kind of in this messy place too. And that was his coping mechanism. Again, this is not about pointing the finger. That's the other thing I want to highlight, is that, like you said, there's 2 people, there's 2 participants, there's 2 people in a relationship. So every event played a role. I don't blame him. I don't point the finger. For us, that was a catalyst. And I believe that everything happens for a reason. And that was the moment that released me and allowed me to step into this authentic place.
Right. And did he ever share how long he was having the affair? Was it important to you at that point, or to know more? I'm just curious about that.
I found out a little bit of information, but to me, it wasn't really particularly relevant, just because I feel like continuing to look back just wasn't going to be productive. I was so focused on moving forward. I was focused on taking care of the family and just making decisions that served my future. Looking back, I wasn't bringing my best to the relationship either. We talk about infidelity, extramarital affairs, etc. But that was his coping mechanism. I view it as he wasn't getting what he needed from me in our marriage, didn't know how to articulate that. So that was his way of getting what he needed. I had other coping mechanisms, right? So for a period of time too, that probably correlated with however long this was going on, I was investing in myself and the house and throwing myself into the kids and the school, like everything but the relationship. So I was more focused on, like I said, just life is all about reframing, is what I found. It's all about reframing the experiences and looking forward. So when there's a massive amount of change, just keeping your sights set on the future. So anytime my mind would go back, I would tell myself that's irrelevant. Because of course, yes, did I have thoughts about, that one Tuesday night 2 years ago when he said he had a work dinner? Was it really a work dinner? I mean, I would literally, it was a personal hell for a while. I would wake up, just psychologically, I would wake up in the middle of the night, and, it's when you find out, bad news, someone who passed away or whatever, you wake up and it's like you go through that for a few seconds. Did this really happen? Is it real? I mean, it was psychologically challenging for a while, but every time I'd have one of those thoughts, I kept telling myself, that's in the past. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant.
And it's about him, not particularly about you. Just because he chose to have an affair with someone else doesn't necessarily mean you are unworthy, unlovable, you are a bad woman, bad wife, bad person. I strongly believe that, and I'm not sure if you share this belief, and you went through this experience, not me. I'm not trying to minimize that. But I think affairs are usually about yourself, the person who is involved, than the other person. But it's so hard, right, for you, because you were on the receiving end. Your trust was shattered.
Right.
You start to question yourself and everything. It's an interesting dynamic in relationships, for sure. What do you think he was needing that he wasn't getting, or he wasn't communicating, or he wasn't even aware of his own needs?
Right. I think,
Because what you went through, what you just described, that you were busy with yourself, with the house and all of that, is so common. It's almost every relationship I witness, almost majority of marriages that I observe, and I work with couples, families. This is the model right now.
Right.
People don't want to admit that, but that's what happens a lot.
Right. And, you had asked what he needed. Again, in hindsight, we never really went and took inventory on, because we thought, well, we're moving forward. We know the direction. But, in hindsight, I could have done a lot differently. And again, to speak to your point about, it kind of eroding your self-confidence or self-worth. And when affairs happen, it's really about what's going on within the person. I believe that now, and it really wasn't necessarily a reflection on me, but it can totally shatter your self-esteem and self-worth. And I had some serious work to do in that area. Because of course I thought, well, maybe if I wasn't, in yoga pants every day when he came home, in a hoodie and no makeup and hair in a ponytail, because I've been running ragged with the kids all day, maybe if I would have looked nicer, because you go through that. Maybe I didn't look pretty enough. Maybe I wasn't this enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not. So it did erode self-confidence for a while. And I did look back and think, well, maybe if I could have done this differently or that differently. But at the end of the day, I kind of realized that it really had nothing to do with me. That was just the way that he chose to get what he needed. But in hindsight, I could have stepped up my game. I wasn't aware that he wasn't getting what he needed, because again, neither one of us really had the skills to communicate this. But could I have shown him more attention when he got home? For sure. But I didn't know that that's what he was looking for.
I know.
Right? He walked in the door from work, 7 p.m. I've been with the kids all day, totally exhausted, dealing with temper tantrums from children. I was excited. He'd walk in the door and some nights I'd be like, okay, heading to Target. I just literally, we were like two ships passing in the night. And there was a little resentment too, which kind of sounds crazy in hindsight, because he's out working, he's slaving, he's working
that.
for his.
Listen, I get that. And many women get that, but still, let's just be honest. The heavy load of parenting falls on the woman's shoulders just because you don't have a job outside the house. Even if you do, women do more still. Men help. We are a different society. We're very conscious. Men help. I'm not discounting that. But still, women do the mental, emotional, physical load of parenting on top of everything else. And on top of that, you have to now worry about looking pretty and all of that. That's why it's not a priority, because you do so much. You burn yourself out. And the stress of parenting in the modern era is very high. And when people experience a lot of stress, daily stress, they don't recognize that they live in toxic, chronic stress. Parenting without any support, with social media, with technology, that everything drains us, our energy. Just thinking about maintaining a house, juggling 4 children's schedules, and doing some things for yourself. That's a lot of stress on one person. And on top of that, you're planning birthday parties, you're doing this and grocery lists and mundane, stupid things. And stress takes all your time, energy, and attention. And honestly, you got nothing for yourself. And definitely you got nothing for the other person. So this is such a natural erosion that happens in a lot of marriages after they hit the 7-year mark, 10-year mark. I see this pattern a lot. And when you are experiencing stress, your natural ability to love, to play, to nurture shuts down, because it's self-preservation mode. And a lot of women are just running around just to keep afloat, to just do the to-do things, the business aspect of administrative aspect of parenting and marriage. And naturally, people drift away, drift apart, and there's no sex. Sexless marriages are, the thing in our culture. And I'm not sure what it takes to stop this process. Maybe you have some thoughts. I sure have some thoughts, but I would love to hear, what do you think? is necessary to repair those marriages, to salvage them if possible? Looking back, what advice you would give to yourself? Do you think it's one person's responsibility? Do you think if you changed, he would have changed as well? I'm just curious, just to summarize what we're talking about.
Yeah, of course. I mean, looking back, there is a lot that I would have done differently, just knowing what I know now. Looking first and foremost, I would have invested in myself. I would have made self-love a lifestyle. I would have nourished my mind, body, and spirit. I was running ragged for years, just trying to keep the ship afloat. And again, no makeup, just not taking care of myself, not eating healthy. I wasn't feeling good about who I was. So I wasn't in a position to bring my best to the marriage or to our family. So looking back, I would have absolutely prioritized self-love and self-care. And even in this whole era of all this craziness running around and technology and kids in a million different activities, I still firmly subscribe to the belief that time is a choice and that we need to make time. We need to figure out how to work in things that are priorities, that are important to us. If the marriage is important, then build things into your day, practices into your day to fortify the marriage. So we think, oh, well, we don't have time, we're running around. But in hindsight, I would have had like a half hour every night. Again, put the kids to bed. Let's connect. Let's spend a half hour and make sure we sit on the couch and have a conversation. I would have prioritized that. And you know what? If the errands didn't get run or if we were missing a few things in the household that week, who cares? But I think sometimes it's just easier to stay at that surface level, to like check all the boxes and be running around, taking care of things on our to-do list. I absolutely would have prioritized the relationship. When he came home every day from work, I would have, obviously the kids would have been running around, but at some point that evening, I would have sat down and said, honey, how was your day? And I don't mean to sound like this, like, doting, like 1950s housewife kind of thing where I wait on him, but just that like conversation, that connection. And we never did that. And then we just would get up the next day and do it all over again. He'd be out the door at 5, getting his morning workout in, working. It was the same cycle that ensued. So I would have absolutely carved out moments for connection. I would have scheduled more date nights. We hardly went on date nights. We didn't do couples trips through the years. We did not prioritize our marriage. We thought we were doing everything right because we were taking care of everything. We were in the throes of everyday living and taking care of the house and the kids and the family. But I absolutely would have prioritized myself. Again, making sure I felt good about myself, because when we don't, the relationship we have with ourselves sets the tone for every aspect of our human experience. So if we aren't taking care of ourselves, if we aren't feeling whole and nourished and full, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, across the board, if we aren't investing in ourselves, we will never become fulfilled and happy, because now we're relying on external factors to do that.
And the other person, if we are not feeling whole and complete, like our authentic self, how can then the other person view us and treat us like such? You know what I mean?
I do. Right.
Yeah. But however, we always switch that mentality, that thinking. We want them to treat us as if we are whole and complete and connected to ourselves, when in reality, we need to do that first step of discovering who we are, accepting all parts of ourselves, and start to love ourselves and show up authentically and whole.
Right.
Bring ourselves to the relationship so that the other person will see, recognize, and treat us like that.
Absolutely. Right? I mean, that is our job first and foremost, is to make ourselves whole and complete, because that's the point. I mean, that's how the universe works. That's how we attract more into our amazingness into our existence, right? It's how we attract other people that are whole and complete. And again, we have to get to that place ourselves. And I think so many people look to, I know I used to, look to someone else to make them happy, looks to someone else to complete that. Now me and my friends joke, some of the single ones, now we have enough experience and we're at our level of evolution where we know that, if someone says to me, you complete me, I run. Because that is not the model under which I want to be in a loving relationship.
Yes, because it's too much to ask, too much responsibility, too much to ask. If I'm feeling broken and I am this needy place for you to see me as whole or treat me as whole, then there's something messed up about that.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Absolutely.
now it's not only a responsibility for you, but also the other person is not going to fall in love with this broken self, right?
Right.
With this person who says, I'm a shitty parent, I'm a crappy mother, I don't look my best, I don't feel my best, but treat me, see the beauty in me, somehow be this magical. And I'm not saying we have to put makeup on and all of that. I am talking about that a deeper connected self. I don't put makeup on every single day. In fact, I don't wear makeup at all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that as a woman. I have nothing against women who wear makeup, but I made that choice for myself that I'm not going to wear makeup. Like, I don't enjoy wearing makeup. I definitely am going to not wear makeup to be attractive for men or for the society or for other people. It's a choice that I make, and I'm very happy with that because that's aligned with how I feel. I do color my hair because I don't like my gray hair, but I'm not coloring it to be seen pretty for my husband, right? That inner beauty, that inner authentic self is what I bring to the table, and I want to be accepted for that person that I am, not how I look, even though looks are important too. I'm not discounting that, right? And everybody has to discover who they are on their own, what their authentic self is. What makes you feel confident, sexy, and secure. If you just put the lip gloss and it makes you feel awesome, do that, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I agree. It's all on the inside. And that's that's what I learned kind of through the years. I realized it's all about doing your soul work and doing that deep inner self-discovery work. And that's really where it all starts. And yeah, you can add on the other, layers, bells and whistles, lip gloss and stuff, but that's the superficial stuff. That's kind of the icing on the cake. But it really, really do have to work to get yourself to a place where you're whole and complete. Because again, that's where you attract from. And that's when you bring your best self to the relationship and to the entire world.
Mm. So how was the reality after divorce? Was it a contemptuous divorce? Was it easy? How long did it take the process? Very quickly? And what did you discover about yourself right away? Those fears that you had and the reality of it. I would love to know.
Yeah, well, overall, the spirit of the divorce was harmonious. We were both on the same page. We both realized that this was the path that we needed to take. And we were committed to making decisions that worked best for us and for the family. So we really maintained that goal, that vision of harmoniousness. We do celebrate certain holidays together, kids' birthdays. And what did I learn about myself? I mean, I had many, many self-discoveries along the way, but what I learned most is that when we trust faith, when we step out of fear and into faith, we open ourselves up to all of the abundance and the joy and the peace and the richness that the universe has to offer. And we just have to trust the process. And that's what I've learned. I've learned how to totally just step out of fear and into faith. I mean, that's really the biggest thing. I know that no matter what happens in life, I will be okay. I will be taken care of. The universe will always provide a way. It will always make sure that I'm taken care of.
And just to conclude our conversation, to go to the, sort of touch upon this aspect of divorce, the kids, how did you deliver the news to the kids? How did they respond or react? Did you do it together? I'm curious about that part too.
Yeah, this is a discussion I'll obviously never forget. And I'm sure the kids will have it indelibly etched into their minds forever. So we decided in March, it was on that March 8th that I decided we were going to be heading down the path of divorce. So there was much discussion about when should we tell the kids, right? They were in the middle of the school year. We didn't want to jeopardize their grades, their academic performance. We decided that we would wait until the end of the school year and tell them we carefully chose a certain Saturday in June. So the plan going in was that my former husband was going to deliver the news. Obviously, we would all be there. We would call them into the family room for a meeting and, just say we wanted to talk to you guys about something. And the plan was for him to deliver the news because based on history, I would be more the emotional one. I didn't think I was going to be able to deliver the news. And just as we were going to start talking, I looked over at him and I could tell emotions were definitely taking over. So I took the helm. I just said, okay, I've got to step up here. And so I delivered the news. He was obviously there. And I said, we wanted to tell you guys that your dad and I have decided that we are going to be getting divorced. And one of my kids left the room immediately. There were a variety of reactions, right? 4 kids, 4 completely different reactions. That we said a few things. We knew we had a very narrow window of about 10 or 15 seconds to say some really, really important things that would stick with them. Everything else after that would just be kind of lost in all of the emotion of the moment. So we just said, we've decided that we're going to get divorced. We are going to be okay. We are, your dad and I are committed to working through this. You guys will always be loved. You will always be cared for. There are going to be some changes, but we are going to work through them in a way that is best for all of us. Just some things that they could anchor on. We wanted to stress that you guys will always be loved. You will always be taken care of. And, one of my kids said, I don't want divorced parents. And it was a dicey couple days. I'm not going to lie. It was really challenging, but we kept assuring them. They had lots of questions about, are we going to stay in this house? Are we going to move? And we answered all of their questions and told them we would be really upfront with them about what changes were going to be made. We talked to them about the parenting schedule a little bit, told them that we'd be switching off every other weekends and that they would be with me most of the week, etc. So yeah, their reactions were kind of across the board, but we made a decision early on that, the analogy that I like to use was that this was like an aircraft, right? We were the pilot and co-pilot, and they were the cabin, so to speak. So think about what happens on an airplane when the plane is going through turbulence, right? The way the message is delivered to the cabin sets the tone for the experience. So if you're going through turbulence and the pilot comes on and says, oh my gosh, we're going through turbulence. It's going to be a really rough ride here. Hold on, everybody. Just keep quiet. If they set that tone of stress and anxiety, the whole cabin is going to respond accordingly, right? But on the other hand, if they come on and say, hey, we're going through some turbulence. It's nothing we haven't seen before. Before too long, we're going to be on to sunnier skies, and say it in a very smooth, calm delivery, the cabin will also respond accordingly. So we committed from the get-go to maintain that tone of calmness.
That's such a great analogy. I love that. Yes. And I'm very glad to hear that you were able to maintain that. And it's an emotional process no matter what. And having 4 kids and going through it yourself, the loss, right? It takes time for everyone to deal on their own and process on their own. But I know now that one of your children said something very insightful. Would you like to share about the whole thing?
I sure will. Yeah, actually, shortly after the divorce, I moved into this new house with the kids, and one of my oldest daughter said to me, Mom, you're so happy now. So she made that comment, that observation, that I was just so much happier. And recently my 9-year-old said to me, she said, just out of the blue, I was just making dinner in the kitchen, and she walks up to me and says, Mom, having divorced parents isn't so bad. And she opened with all of the things you would expect a 9-year-old to open with, like, I have 2 bikes and I have 2 houses and I have 2 bedrooms. But then she said something that really, really resonated with me at a deep level. And she said, and you and Dad are friends. And so we didn't sit down with the kids and say, we're going to make this harmonious. We just kind of set the tone. We just allowed them to observe how we interacted with each other. And I think I think that's a huge lesson for them to take away from this, that your life can be completely turned upside down, and you can actually decide to move separate ways, and you can still maintain an atmosphere of harmonious. You can maintain an atmosphere of friendship. We can still celebrate holidays and special occasions together. And I think that's a huge, a valuable lesson for the kids to witness.
Where can the listener find you online, Pamela, and get your book, connect with you on social media?
Yeah, so my book, I just released my first book. It's called Soar, and it's an experiential journey through my divorce process, and shows how I reframe the experience through the lens of growth and transformation, and partnered with the universe to step into this authentic reality. So Soar, SOAR, it's on Amazon. You can also check out my book launch website, which is PamelaSavino.com. I also have a Facebook group. I am at liveauthentically.today/FB. And I have just recently started my own podcast. It's called
Yay!
Thank you. It's called the Live Authentically Show, and that will be officially announced soon.
Great, great. Thank you so much for being so authentic and honest. We haven't overused that word on this podcast, haven't we? So I truly appreciate your honesty and your openness. I mean, I throw a lot of curveballs and I challenge you and my guests usually. And I love the conversation that we had today. It truly means a lot to me to be able to have this conversation, to think out loud. And we created a beautiful space, both of us, for the listener to think about important topics and question things and walk away with insights and think a little outside the box also. So thank you. I'm sending you love.
Thank you. It has been such an honor to be with you this morning. I am so grateful that you've had me on as a guest on your show and have allowed me to share my story. It's all in the spirit of healing, right? It's in the spirit of helping other people. So I've enjoyed every moment of this discussion. I love rich discussions like this. I could feel like I could sit and talk to you all day about this. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.